Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Energy Realities Podcast, our weekly roundtable discussion of normally four co-hosts, but from Europe and Canada and the United States. But today we're down to three because Irina Slav is not going to be able to join us from Bulgaria today. But with me today we have Dr. Tammy Nemeth, who is in the UK, I believe, today, if I
Yep.
recognize the background.
Yeah, I'm in the
How-
UK today.
How are things in Keir Starmer world?
Well, I'm sure we'll get into it.
I couldn't help noticing season 5 of the
Clarkson's
great
Farm.
Clarkson's Farm has premiered, and oh my goodness, they burned Keir Starmer in effigy on top of the bonfire. I was overjoyed seeing that. Anyway, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
That's okay. I mean, we haven't watched it yet. My daughter said we have to wait till she gets back from university this week, so we're holding on until the weekend.
I'm sorry, I'm blowing it. So I won't say anything more. I'm not going to spoil the narrative. And also with us today is Dr. Stu Turley, who is in his bunker in Oklahoma this morning.
Like Jill Biden, I only got my MBA, so I'm not really a doctor. And since Jill Biden has been asked not to say she's a doctor again, I get quite entertained by false people claiming to be doctors. And so while I'm in Oklahoma today, I'm on my way to Texas again. So I am really tired of the road.
I'm sure you are. I'm sure you are, man. That's quite a haul from Abilene to wherever you are in Oklahoma.
The hidden bunker.
Your location. Yes, the hidden bunker in Oklahoma.
How many
I
miles
myself
have
am
you put
David
on your truck?
Blackman, and I am not a doctor of anything, although I also often play one on television. But here we are with the that's for all you Gen Zs, that's a reference to a 40-year-old TV ad. So don't even try to Google it. Here we are. We're going to talk the current situation with energy around the world. We're going to cover a variety of topics today. I want to start with an excellent piece, and I'm sorry Irina is not with us today. She has a terrific piece at oilprice.com in which she analyzes what the post-war oil trade could look like, which is probably not a lot like it did before the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, as a variety of workarounds have come about since this war began on February 28th, including about 7 million barrels of Saudi oil going out to the Red Sea on their big pipeline. The ADNOC with its big pipeline in the UAE with a 1.5 million barrel a day capacity to get it into they're bypassing the strait into the, what sea is it? I'm forgetting the name. Anyway, to the south, and they're doubling the capacity of that and going to be ready by the end of the year. And so that's going to be 3 million a day going out that way. And then we've had significant increase in production in Venezuela, 500,000 barrels a day already in just 4 months. And that was in May's number. We've had big increases in Guyana, the neighbor to the east of Venezuela, by Exxon and Chevron. And then Suriname is also developing its offshore resources. That's going up. Russia's exports have increased. And so even though 20 million barrels a day or so are going through the strait, a lot of that capacity has been replaced by other sources. The United States is increasing its oil exports, and then we also have the release from strategic petroleum reserves of various companies. And so the crisis that has been advertised that was going to come about with $150 oil prices keeps getting delayed. And who knows how much longer it can be delayed, but President Trump doesn't appear to be in any real hurry despite all the public pronouncements of getting to a resolution of this thing, and neither does Iran. And so it looks to me like we're going to have a conflict lingering in a closed Strait of Hormuz for months to come. And I just wonder what my fellow panelists think about that. Yeah, there's Irina's piece. It's really a terrific read, and everyone should go read it. It's very succinct, much more succinct than my verbal lathering. Tammy, what is your outlook right now on where this thing's headed?
Well, it's like whenever there's an energy crisis, people like to speculate on what it's going to look like afterwards. If you think back to, say, the first energy crisis in 1973, it was all, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? America's production's declining. And then there was this huge outpouring of investment in exploration and development around the world, right? So you had the North Sea, which suddenly, was boosted, came up online. There were accelerations in other jurisdictions. The oil sands, the technology started to be there to really increase production in Canada. And, people in 1973 would not have been able to predict how this would have played out. The same thing in 1979, the same thing after the original Iraq War in the 90s. And so, every time there's a crisis, there's, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? This is terrible. And companies step up, innovation steps up. The only thing that holds things back really are governments. When governments make poor decisions. And unfortunately, there is an activist class out there that has the ear of the bureaucracy and the politicians who are counseling them to not move forward in the Western countries. So Saudi Arabia, UAE, and others are like, right, okay, you know what? We're going to build some pipelines. We're going to get things built. We're going to get things done. We don't want to be held ransom by some autarkic regime that's going to tell us, no, we're going to shut off these choke points. And so they're finding a workaround. They have the money to do it. They have the engineers and the capabilities, and they're just getting it done. Instead, in Europe, you have this hand wringing. Oh no, we have these net zero targets. We need this stuff, but we're phasing it out. And so we just need temporary stuff. So we don't want to make investments because it conflicts with our net zero plans. And so then you have Norway going cap in hand to the EU saying, well, actually this Arctic moratorium you have isn't helpful. And we would like to be able to provide the continent with the oil and gas that it needs, but you're kind of holding us back. And the EU's hand wringing and whatever. UK can't get its head out of its butt. And you've got this new clean power plan, which is insane. And you have them all saying, oh no, we're not going to build up the North Sea anymore. We're going to close it all down and everything else. And that'll make us a clean energy superpower and all this garbage. And so, the only things holding back the appropriate adjustments that are required is governments, and those being beholden to the sort of climate class, I guess is how to describe it. And it's unfortunate.
Yeah, really is. Stu, what's your view on things?
I think
markets more resilient than people thought they were.
And I think it's amazing in the U.S., at least in the U.S., I'm seeing that the climate. Does everybody remember that movie with was it the squirrel chasing the squirrel? And the attention span of the world is now 1.2 nanoseconds. And when you take a look at what's going on, let me bring this up. When you say you had just a minute ago, David, the straits, here are the strait. This morning, Yemen is now getting ready to say they want to close Bab el Mandeb. You have the Suez Canal. You have the pipeline on this map for our podcast listeners, the east-west. There's the 1.5 million. Let's take a look at this for half a sec. Iran has now claimed that they are going to go through and claim the Gulf of Oman that you were referring to, David.
The Gulf of Oman.
And they are going to claim that as theirs. So they're now claiming it. So even the UAE, I think that the Strait of Hormuz, the world, according to, I love Irina's article because it's really pointing out the world's moving on away from the Strait of Hormuz. When you have somebody claiming all the way across and saying, "Oh, by the way, we're going to charge for that," that's a real problem.
Yeah.
What's going to be priced in, paper versus physical? And when we take a look at that, David, I think we're going to see history shows us that the United States doesn't want to do boots on the ground in the summer during the summer. So Iran knows this. We don't want to be boots on the ground. I think Iran's going to wait us out. Israel is now punching Iran in the nose, and Iran's punching Israel in the nose, and President Trump punched what's his name? Bibi.
And yeah.
Thank you. What's his name? Punched what's his name and said, "Dude, you're on your own." So, and rightfully so, this is now, I think, going to be between those two. And when it calms down, the world is changing permanently. And the world does not need the Strait of Hormuz. The UK, the EU, London, and India has just met with the president of Venezuela. They're cutting new deals. Russia is building its imports. President Zelensky has asked to meet twice this past weekend with President Putin. I think he's seeing an off-road. So we may see an end of the war there. And we're going to see the war between Israel and Iran now heat up. What's the bottom line? Energy security starts at home. And as Dr. Nemeth pointed out, sorry, I didn't mean to insult you there, but Dr. Nemeth, I think you pointed it out greatly. The projects are going to be huge. For the pricing, it's going to be, when does China start buying again? I think they've done a great job mandating, and they're living off their SPR.
Yeah.
We have really ripped our SPR down. In September, we hit Biden lows again. But the way our great Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright, has done it is their trades. You will put in 1.25 barrels for every one you pull out. I'm okay with that. Just means it keeps it out of the budget cycle. So as I get done with my rant, I think we're in a lot of pain until Labor Day. And so pricing is going to remain volatile because Qatar just had 9 tankers go through LNG, the Strait of Hormuz, going dark. There's a difference between dark fleet. Dark means they turned off their transponders and they pop up like guppies somewhere else in the world. The one I just wrote an article on was that's on the way to China. So China still is buying, but this tells me a bigger problem. The world does not know how to price out the futures market versus the physical market, because they're decoupled right now. So all bets are off on oil prices. Anybody that's pricing in oil right now, unless you got a crystal ball, and what's the wizard that is Harry Potter? Unless you got a Harry Potter crystal ball and a wand, you're a mess.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's a pure crapshoot right now. Chevron and Exxon executives at that conference Friday before last warned that we were getting near tank bottoms in our domestic storage here in the United States, not the underground storage at the SPR, but the tank farms all over the country at Cushing and other strategic distribution points here in the United States. And when you get too close to tank bottoms, you're going to create all sorts of displacement in the ability of refineries to source the crude they need to produce the refined products that everyone needs here in the United States. And then 2, the ability to distribute those products in proper volumes to specific parts of the country. And that would result in the refineries engaging in bidding wars for physical cargoes of crude coming in from other countries. Most of our exports, a majority of, of U.S. imports come from Canada via pipelines, but that's only about a little over 60%. And then the rest comes in tankers from places like Mexico and Venezuela and Guyana, and a little bit from the Middle East, mainly to California, although that's now being displaced by the Jones Act waiver, and U.S. or tankers having the ability to deliver from Gulf Coast refineries into California. But the reality is that they believe that could create a big price spike by the end of July, which is only 22 days away now. They were talking about, even Mike Wirth, CEO of Chevron, and a senior vice president from Exxon, were both talking about a spike price into the $120 to $150 range. And of course, financial markets, the swapping market, where the Brent price index is established, have been pretty muted, really, on the oil price when you consider the magnitude of the disruption through Hormuz. So I just wonder what you guys think. Are we really going to see a spike like that by the end of July? I don't know what to think about it, quite honestly. And obviously the paper markets aren't responding to that yet. Tammy, what do you think? Is
I don't
Chevron
know.
and
I'd like
Exxon
to.
overstating?
No, I'm not sure. I don't think they would overstate that. I'm
Yeah, I
not
don't
sure what
either.
they would gain by doing that. What I'm interested to know is that there were this talk about California running out of diesel and jet fuel by the end of May or beginning of June. So what's happened with that? Do you guys
Yeah,
know?
I mean, there's a Reuters report today that it's not materializing.
Now, is
So
that because they're able to bring refined
The
product from the Gulf Coast around?
they're bringing some in from the Gulf Coast, but it doesn't really go into great detail about why it's not materializing. It's a pretty brief report that doesn't go into a lot of detail. It's
Right.
called,
I
people
think
can Google it. It's EU sees no jet fuel price surge. Transport chief says, and so, it's just not happening yet, but that doesn't mean it's not going to happen.
Right. Okay.
the War Powers Act was enabled in order to get Sable offshore to produce, I believe, 30,000 barrels per day to help. That will fill 1 and 1.5 of the 7 remaining refineries.
Yeah.
What California has a problem is, this brings up my point, that is, I don't think the world knows where the market is anymore.
Right.
The problem is, nobody knows where the dark fleet is. Nobody knows where their transponders are going on. We had all the refineries say we're not shipping any more tankers out of, because California imports jet fuel, 40 to 60% of their jet fuel from the Asian refineries like Singapore and others. They had a ban on it for a short term. They lifted that ban. They've been getting some tankers from dark fleet tankers. Those have been rolling out. Russia's been rolling it, and Venezuela has been doing it. I don't think Patrick brings up a great point. Isn't California's import ability at full capacity right now? Yes. At the current level of their 7 refineries, Patrick, if they lose one refinery, you add $1 to diesel or gasoline. That's simple. I mean, that's a ballpark number, but the import pipes are maxed out at their current
the import
demand
pipeline.
level.
Okay.
Yeah.
The import tankers that come in, David, they import 40 to 60% of their diesel, jet fuel, and gasoline for our largest economy. They're maxed out. They can't lose any of those. And what did Gavin Newsom, Dr. Nemeth, do in the last 2 weeks? He signed an extension to the CARB, and he's doubling down to close those.
Yeah, they want to create a crisis. There's no doubt.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
well, one of the,
Go ahead.
if I could just pivot a little bit here, one of the interesting things last week was President Trump signing an executive order that activates the Defense Production Act to keep open a bunch of coal plants and refurbish them. $700 million apparently for power plant upgrades, new projects, and export infrastructure. So
Yeah.
that was really interesting, because if you like up here where they told Paul says that this morning's Starmer speech to lead the world in AI and tech, no one told Starmer that Miliband's energy dictatorship will undermine this from day one, which is one of the reasons. It's not just in the United States that they need the coal power to keep the grid reliable, which is a big part of it, but also to ensure there's enough power there for the different data center build outs that they're putting forward. So it's a tale of, when you look at what the UK is doing and what the United States is doing, is just so different. It is so different. The approach, the thinking. So yeah, what did you guys think of the coal power executive order? Do you think there'll be litigation to stop it?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, the anti-development people will sue over anything the Trump administration does. So there will be litigation, but that they're not going to really have a legitimate case. They'll shop for a judge who will give them a temporary injunction, and then the appeals court and Supreme Court will overrule them, and that'll be it. Because there's nothing illegal about this. These are low interest loans. They're not grants like Biden was throwing out in the $1 billion to all of his cronies at their dark money NGOs over the previous 4 years. These are low interest loans that'll be repaid, but they're key to keeping these coal plants running and maintaining adequate base load power on various regional grids here in the country. So, I was expecting it, and I'm also still expecting, we will be permitting new coal plants in addition to the one that's already been permitted in Alaska. We're going to be seeing permitting of new coal plants here in the lower 48 soon as well under this administration, because we need them. There's parts of the country where you don't have the natural gas infrastructure to deliver gas to power plants that are built, and you've got to have base load. It doesn't matter if you get it from what technology you get it from. Nuclear is too slow in coming, so the fastest way to get the base load in a growing economy with a growing population is through coal. And so that's going to happen in the United States. And there's really, the left is going to yell and scream. That's what they do for a living, but they really can't stop it. It's like Spencer Pratt's situation in California. He really can't do anything to stop the election from being stolen, but it's being stolen. And the same thing is true of the left-wing environmental lobby here in the United States. They really can't win on these issues, but they're going to keep fighting because that's how they raise money. But they're not going to win on any of them. And that's just the way it is. So we'll have more coal plants here pretty soon. But it was interesting to me over the weekend how little pushback there was in the media to that concept. Very, very little media on it at all.
That is funny. One other thing I'm going to bring to the stage, the map on, the image here. Florida, they also included in this Florida, and they extended the use of the Florida one. Notice that coal is only 4% of the energy mix in Florida. Florida's electricity is low, 15.8 cents. When you take a look at Hawaii, the national average is 17. But if you look at every blue state, they're 38% higher energy costs in the United States. Yes. Let me also bring to the stage, let me remove this, bring this, and then add this. Do what?
I like how you spelled nuclear.
Nuclear. That was my
tribute to George Bush.
George Bush imitation. So yes, you could tell I did that graphic, and it is terrible. Thank you. And you take a look at this. This does not have any misspellings because it came from the U.S. Department of Energy. and these funding breakdown, the 700 includes 425 million for the DPA to modernize and upgrade 13 existing across 10 states, 185 to support the 2 new coal plants in Alaska and West Virginia, David, that you were mentioning.
Okay.
And then 75 million for the long delayed Oakland bulk and oversized export. This ought to drive every greenie in the state of California nuts trying to export these things, but you got to love it. So hats off to Secretary Chris Wright and the Trump administration for doing what Japan also did. They mothballed their coal plants. They've fired them up. But let's wait a minute. Let's think about the UK and Germany. They blowed them up, as we say in Texas.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
blowed them up. Sorry.
Blowed them up. So
What are they
back to-
exporting? Sorry, what are they exporting?
U.S. is exporting coal. We're building our mining again to export. We're sitting
Yeah.
on some
Okay,
of the largest
Yeah.
coal deposits in the world, and
yeah, other
we're
than
going to start
China, we have
exporting
the
it.
biggest. Yeah.
Is it metallurgical coal or for power?
I haven't got that far yet, but it's
Okay.
a coal export facility that I wrote about. I didn't check whether or not it was metallurgical or if it was the 2 different types, but I think it's fantastic because that the mining of things is got to keep it going. Hey, and
Well, yeah,
people-
and people, I had, I won't say who it came from, but I had this note sent to me over the weekend about why I would be in favor of having more copper mining in the United States. I wrote a piece last week about the new copper mine that BHP and Rio Tinto are partnering on in Arizona. It's really the
Yeah.
revitalization of an existing mine. And I mean, it's absolutely essential that we have more copper mining in the United States because we're so dependent on these China dominated supply chains. And yet, from a very knowledgeable and smart person, I get this note questioning why I would support that because there are so many alternatives in imports for our copper in the United States. And I mean, I just, it's such an irrational thing for, I mean, real smart people to be hypnotized by these anti-mining activists. It just drives me crazy. We have to have not only that mine in Arizona, we're going to need 5 or 10 more of them in the United States over the next 30 years. I mean, that's just to keep up with electricity demand, for crying out loud. Copper's in everything. And so
Yeah.
I just don't understand it. I know you have the same thing in Canada and the UK, Tammy. It's
Yeah.
just, how do you get past it? I don't know how we ever get past. It's really a religious cult.
But I
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
like the industry doesn't do enough to explain how they are not contaminating the environment.
Yeah.
Now, the
Yeah.
activists will say they don't say anything because they're contaminating the environment, rather than saying, look, we have all of these different precautions. We try to make sure that we're taking the best care that we can. We're going to restore the land afterwards, and so on and so forth. There's ways that they can do that. And I think also if there's environmental issues, then what's the situation for monitoring and explain that to people? Because all they hear
Right.
is the reflexive mining's bad, it's destructive, and so on. And North America, UK, Europe have a lot of regulations in order to ensure that things are looked after properly, which is why it's so expensive to develop a mine in North America, UK, Europe. So tell your story.
Right.
Tell your story.
Yeah. I mean,
And
the oil industry's the same way. You're just reluctant to tell the story. Don't think they get a
Yeah.
lot out of it. But in reality, if you're a real, true environmentalist, if you're really worried about the environment, you should want the development of the minerals we have to have all across the world to happen in developed nations like the United States and Europe, and not in Asia, not in Africa, where there's in some countries, no real regulations.
No
protecting
rules.
the
I
environment.
know. I know.
You should want it to happen in countries that have strict regulations.
Yeah.
But the hypocrisy of it all is just mind-boggling to me. Indonesia is looking to restrict exports over time. U.S. could grab the opportunity. It's a strategically smart move. Your coal ash is very low ash and sulfur, not as polluting as people think. Yet
Yeah.
again, if you're really concerned about the environment, you're going to want people around the world, even in China, burning U.S. coal. Okay. I mean, think before you go crazy and knee jerk to opposition. And Paul's previous post is really good too. This is the point, we always talk about how not all oil is equal to other oil, right? There's different grades of oil. Same thing with coal.
Yeah.
Power plants across Asia are designed to take a range of coals, including Wyoming subbituminous, similar to Indonesian thermal coal, the number one exporter of thermal. So, it's really good points, Paul. Appreciate everything you're contributing here today. And then there's this one. Coal is all robots.
Now, does that mean the mining of it? I don't quite understand.
I don't either.
I love that though. What was I going to go to next? There's
also is coal is a fantastic baseline that the greenies kind of forget. I wonder, David and Dr. Nemeth, is when we sit back and take a look, if we realize that the world is greener now because CO2 is actually plant food, and if it is the actual pollution that coal plants did in the past was particulate matter, right, and you take a look at all the new filters that are on particulate matter, which is actually the pollution that we're doing better, so coal is cleaner than it's ever been in the United States. Where's the hypocrisy now?
Right. Yeah, but they're not worried about real pollution. They've invented this new pollution called plant food. So that's what they hang their hats on.
So I recall back in the 90s, the government of Alberta was really big on developing the oil sands, but having their power grid using coal, because Alberta has a lot of coal. But they were really concerned about the particulate matter. And so they had developed a technology which became labeled clean coal technology. And they mandated that their coal power plants would all be fitted with this. And so they would use their coal and export their oil and gas. Yeah. And then the war on coal came along, and it didn't matter that it had the particulate filters and all these different things, because the way that the technology worked is that the emissions level was similar to a natural gas power plant, but it didn't matter because the war on coal was just so crazy. It didn't matter what your emissions were. It was just bad, and you had to get rid of it. And which is the attitude towards all of these different kinds of things with the climate activists. And so now they retired a bunch of new coal power plants. They converted a bunch to natural gas to remove coal from their grid. But when you see China, when they're building out all of their new ones, they have said, I can't confirm it, but the Chinese government has said, we deploy the clean coal technology. We don't understand why you're so angry with us, that we're building coal, which is reliable and so forth. So it's interesting that the activists target Western countries for deploying clean coal technology. And yet when China does it, it gets a kind of, a pass. They don't even talk about it. It
almost makes you want to audit where the green group's money is really coming from, doesn't it?
Which is difficult to do because it gets circled around with different groups. So it enters one, it gets sent as a donor advised fund to somebody else, who sends it to somebody else, who sends it to somebody else. And it's really difficult to track that information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, and of course it all boils down to NGOs, Sierra Club, and you name them. Which issue do we focus on that's going to raise us the most money from people who are stupid and afraid and don't know anything about it? And demonizing coal and demonizing big oil are always right at the top of those lists. And so that's what they do. I mean, it just all boils down to money. like everything else in the world. And so they'll deny it as long as the day is, but we all know it's true.
Oh, yeah. I think money's part of it, but I think there's other issues that motivate them too.
Oh, well, sure, sure. And some of them, to be fair, some of them really are concerned about the environment, but they're just too hypocritical to focus on what's real. Okay.
Yeah.
Because they're making a living like everybody else. And so, again, it comes back to what are they willing to do and say? If they were real, if they're really concerned about the environment, they'd be focusing on real pollution and not this magical thermometer control we call carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
Not Chevron, BP. I don't want to end this show without, of course, we're not even 2/3 of the way through, but I want to be sure we have a discussion about BP firing its chairman of the board and going through yet another management shakeup, which is just seems to be a constant state of turmoil at BP. Albert Manifold was fired. Was it just last week? Man, I'm having a hard time keeping up now. For unnamed, unspecified kind of improper behavior, management behavior. One of the rumors is that he's very outspoken and cusses a lot, and snowflakes on the leadership team at BP apparently couldn't take it. So they fired another chairman. They've gone through 5 CEOs in 6 years. Is BP ever going to become a stable company, Tammy, or was the hit from the Macondo incident just so big that it can never really truly recover as a company?
That's an interesting question. I think it goes to what direction the shareholders want it to take. And they had invested so big into being beyond petroleum and into the whole wind, solar kind of renewable space. And, a lot of their big institutional shareholders wanted that. And I think that they were realizing they were falling behind all the other oil and gas companies because these investments are a sinkhole to some extent if you're not harvesting all the subsidies related to it and so on. And they were trying to get into a space in which they didn't have expertise, which is that costs a lot of money. And then when they decided to pivot and go back to what they know, there was pushback from these institutional shareholders. And when they said, okay, look, you're asking us to do all this reporting that could be an issue and result in litigation because we're not sure we can provide the information in an as accurate manner as you're requesting. And so they sought to sort of remove some of those things. And the shareholders got really angry, the institutional ones, the pension funds, the activist ones. And it was right after that meeting that they turfed them. So is there a connection between what the climate objectives are of a lot of these institutional shareholders and what the leadership wanted to do? And was this whole governance thing just an excuse to dump him? And who are they going to replace him with? Someone who's going to return BP to being beyond petroleum? I don't know.
And that is the big question. It really is. I mean, what are they going to replace him with? I guess we haven't seen the announcement. Well, I mean, we saw the announcement of a pro tem chairman, but not a permanent one yet. Stu, what do you think? You got anything you want to say about BP?
I feel sorry for him because the chairman, I think, was set up. I don't know this to be true, but it seems like the green advocacy group of is trying to take him out because he was trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And here's a chairman trying to save a company that he was brought in to save, and you can be fired for doing the right thing. So I think BP and Shell may not be long to stay in UK. And this is another example of how, let's take the Chicago Bears. How about the Bears? The Bears leaving Chicago because of left blue state type stuff. It's the same thing with the war on the UK and their oil. They're going to lose tax revenue. They're so blinded by policies that political leaders lose tax revenue. They implement green energy that ain't green, as I say in my Tex Okie accent. Green energy ain't green. You can't make green energy without coal, without oil, without aluminum. I mean, I can't speak, I can't write, and sure as hell, I know more than they do, and that's pretty sad. And I'm also a guest. I'm a game show host.
So here's why I posed the question to Tammy the way I did, focused on Macondo, is because Shell, you mentioned Shell. Shell has also been, over the years, really focused on burnishing its green credentials. It didn't go to the whole Beyond Petroleum, green sunflower logo thing. But it's been really focused on that. It's headquartered in Europe and has, was in The Hague and now in London. And so had all those same pressures on it as a company that BP had. But what Shell didn't experience, and BP did, was the greatest man-caused petroleum disaster in world history, which was the Deepwater Horizon Macondo incident in 2011. And, the $100 billion, at least, that's a conservative estimate, financial fallout from that, which I don't think BP has ever fully recovered from. And so, yes, I mean, I think BP's green agenda has been a corporate disaster just from a strategic and financial standpoint. But, they haven't really gone in just as a practical matter any more fervently to all that than Shell did at one time. But Shell didn't have the major environmental disaster BP did. And I just think, BP's net market cap is half of what Shell's is now. 15 years ago, they were virtually identical. And looking, there's every few years we go through this round of rumors that there's going to be a merger between the two. And now really the prospect is, well, Shell might just buy BP, not merge with them, but just buy them out. And I honestly think that's the most likely outcome for BP, is they're going to end up getting absorbed into Shell.
Yeah.
And then Shell's going to relocate their headquarters to the United States to avoid all the punitive damage from the Starmer regime. I just think you can almost see this handwriting on the wall, and I wouldn't be surprised if all of that happens within the next 2 years. Tammy, would the Starmer regime even be disappointed if Shell and BP left the UK for America? I mean, I don't even know. It's hard for me to gauge.
I know they would miss the tax revenue, but gee, it sure would make them sound like a clean energy superpower by kicking out all the big oil companies.
Right.
It's hard to say. I mean, the Starmer government is just so, I don't know, destructive. But they're a socialist. They're a socialist party. I mean, they were set up by the Fabian Socialists, which is all about moving gradually towards the point of socialism where it can become communism. And, they are working really hard to do that. And, one of the interesting things that came out in some of the Mandelson letters a couple of weeks ago, which really got a bit underreported, was that they would sit around the cabinet table. Who can we tax? Who's the next one that we can tax? Because we need to redistribute and do all this stuff. And so they would be angry that they would lose that tax money. But on the other hand, I think they would feel like it would burnish their credentials as being the so-called clean energy superpower. What's interesting is that, in 2008, under the previous Labor government, which I think at that point was being run by Tony Blair's finance minister who had taken over the party. What was his name? I can't recall. Someone on there who's from Britain. Remind me who it is.
Can't remember.
But in any event, Gordon Brown.
Thank
So they established the Climate Change Committee, which produces the 5-year plan. These are the targets and plans that the government should follow, its recommendations, whatever. And then the government votes on whether or not they wish to approve them. And so a couple of weeks ago, they released what they said they thought the target should be. And Ed Miliband and Keir Starmer took all of them. And then they had the National Energy or Electricity, whatever, NESO, produce its Clean Power 2030 plan. And David Turver had an excellent post yesterday on his Substack, Eigenvalues, substack.com, where he breaks it down. And they're promising that, that when they're in power, as they're in power, all this clean energy will lower the bills and we won't have to be dependent on these foreign natural gas, even though the UK has natural gas if it wants, but doesn't.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this Clean Power plan, by 2030, in 4 years, they're going to get rid of their gas. It's going to be 5% of the grid, and everything else is going to be wind and solar. Like, come on, are you joking me? And so if you look at it, it's actually David had the numbers where it's like the costs for consumers will increase by £700 a year. That's his modeling estimate. So right now they're saying they will reduce everybody's bill by £300 a year, but the policies are going to increase it by $700 a year. And people are supposed to just, oh, okay, but we'll be a clean superpower. This will be great. It's just absurd.
Yeah, but without the policies, without the subsidies, without all the taxes and the displacements in the market, this self-destructive cycle between government and those industries, that without the subsidies, they're not going to be built, and without them getting built, they can't eliminate fossil fuels and claim to be a clean energy superpower. And we're seeing it in the United States. Once you eliminated the $7,500 subsidy for buying electric vehicle sales collapsed. And at the end of July, once the big subsidies from the Inflation Reduction go away for wind and solar, we're going to see a big drop off in wind and solar projects in the United States. It's just the way it is. It's economics. And, it just, the governments want to try to ignore the way the world and the markets work. But at the end of the day, economies and markets are going to prevail one way or another. And just like we're seeing in the evolution of oil trades, right, Stu?
Yes. I got a question. Let me bring to the stage my question I just asked ChatGPT. If you sit back, best figures, I think I just threw ChatGPT into a headache. I asked him about, this was pretty funny. BP and Shell total from current imported annual figures, they could lose $3 billion in tax revenues, what it looks like a year if they got rid of them. So it is absolutely amazing to me that when you take a look at the billions of dollars of tax revenue that they could lose, where are they going to make that money up? Because the windfall profits tax has been a graft for their green energy, and their green energy ends up actually costing consumers more.
Yeah.
Go figure.
I know.
No one could have seen that coming.
So they'll lose the revenue stream, so they won't be able to redistribute it to their pet projects or friends or whatever. And all of the wind and solar companies are so subsidized with these contracts for difference and these other things. So I really don't know where they're going to get that money from. They figure that the financial services industry, maybe that's where they think they'll get more money. I don't know. But they made these changes to the inheritance taxes. and for farmers and whatnot, they've kind of walked back a little bit of it. But basically, I think I don't know. I don't wish to speculate in that respect, because I think it would be what they would want to do is very negative. Um, but one of the things that has been pushed by Octopus Energy, which is the big quasi-subsidized organization in the UK for the grid and whatnot.
In Las Vegas,
Um,
that's called the mob.
yeah, but they're quote partly owned, or they have investors from Al Gore's investment firm, the Canada Pension Plan, a Japanese pension fund. In any event, they really push the idea of virtual power plants. And the reason I want to bring this into the conversation is that Google signed this huge agreement with this group called Vectus, I think, in PJM, and they're marketing it as bring your own power, but they're not. And this company basically puts software on the grid that then the virtual part of this power plant is that the software determines where people have solar panels, where people have EVs connected to the grid, and they manage it. And if you sign on to their scheme, you agree that you will reduce your consumption when it's required, that you will give them access to your thermostat, your appliances that are smart appliances, so that when there's a huge demand from the data center or something else on the grid, you're agreeing that they can adjust your consumption. People sign on to this. Google is agreeing to pay people to turn off so they can use that for their data center. That's not bring your own power. So I think it's incorrect for them to be marketing it like that. And what people are signing on to this?
Well, if you can't trust Google, who can you trust?
Oh, don't get me started. When you sit back and take a look, that's almost like robbing from people. I mean, let's take a look at the Inflation Reduction Act put out by Nancy Pelosi. That increased inflation. It's the same thing. It's marketing.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely evasion of privacy. I guarantee you, solar don't get me wrong. Solar done right is just like data centers done right. If you put solar on your roof and you can separate from the grid, rock on. If you can generate your own power and you can afford it, go do it. That way you're not beholden to the government. If you can be independent of the government, they're going to do everything in their power to keep you from being independent of the government.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your power is not your power. It's
Exactly.
whatever the grid wants. And I just want to say that the company's name is Voltus, not Vectus. So it's Voltus is the company that Google signed this agreement with, 100 megawatt virtual power plant. Now, this is the first of its kind in the world, and I'm concerned because this is what they've been talking about bringing into the UK for a long time, which is why they've been trying to mandate smart meters so that the smart meters would be connected. Octopus has really been pushing it. I think Octopus is also involved in PJM. I'm not sure because they're all over the place. But it's just another way to say that you have to alter your consumer behavior around the grid, that the grid isn't there for you, and they're not building the grid appropriately. And Google is taking advantage of this to push this whole virtual power plant idea, which I think is just a disaster for anybody who enjoys freedom and free markets.
Yeah.
I see it as a big warning sign. It is a
very big
gigantic warning sign.
Flashing red light. We've got 5 minutes left. What have I not brought up that you folks wanted to bring to this show this morning? Nothing?
Stu, go ahead. I've got stuff,
I'm
but
good.
go ahead, Stu. I've talked too much.
I'm having fun. If you guys can't tell, I'm having a blast. I'll tell you what's going to be changing is that we are seeing the Everything I've been talking about is coming through. So I'm
Yep.
not as dumb as I look, thank goodness. I'm very, very serious. I think the new trading blocks are formalizing. I think we are actually going to wake up. I think California stealing elections it's pretty sad that this is coming to this. The world is shifting to energy. Energy security starts at home, and your energy dominance is displayed through your exports. Is something I've been saying a long time. Guess what's happening around the world? Pipelines. We're seeing, as you talked about, the pipelines going to the Gulf of Oman. We talked about Saudi Arabia 30 years ago putting into the Yanbu exit port. We have the Houthis and the Blowfish threatening to close the El Bab Mandab Strait.
Whatever.
You have all of this stuff going on. All of this is coming to pass. If you can't develop the energy source in your own country, don't trust another country, period.
Yeah.
Tammy?
Okay, so I'm going to bring Canada in. So
Yes.
last week, the environment minister, the former environment minister, Stephen Guilbeault, who was a climate activist, said he was resigning and he would leave by the summertime or whatever. But there was a letter from 14 Liberal MPs who are on the climate end of the spectrum, who wrote a letter to Mark Carney expressing their displeasure with his memorandum of understanding with Alberta and his championing supposedly of pipelines in Canada. And they wouldn't release the names of these MPs. Of course, if it were a conservative government, that would be all over the news, but they're keeping the name secret. So interestingly, as part of the Major Projects Office, in order to expedite the building of pipelines and developing natural gas facilities or oil sands or whatever, they said in some circumstances they would find ways to expedite the environmental assessments. But soon after this letter came and Guilbeault resigned, now they're opening it up to a consultation and they're reconsidering it. So one of the big problems in trying to get anything built in Canada are these environmental assessments that go on and on and on. And one will get done, then it'll get litigated, then they have to redo, then it gets litigated, then they have to redo it again. And it just takes forever. And companies are like, okay, we can't deal with this. So now he's like, oh, well, there's been concerns expressed. I think we have to open this up for a consultation. Maybe we're moving too quickly on that. So once again, he's made all these statements and signed these memoranda of understanding, but now he's going to change the terms. So Alberta thinks it's got a great deal. They're going to change probably how the environmental assessments are done to make it, poor and long, a long time to do them like they had before. So nothing's really improved. And then the other thing about Canada, which is hilarious, is that we have this Jekyll and Hyde of Mark Carney. So on the one hand, to Canadians, he's like, yeah, I'm like General Brock. I'm pushing back against America like the War of 1812. Elbows up. We're tough and America's bad. And then he's at the economic event, that economic club in New York, where he's like, Canada can help make America great again. And it was just like, what? Which Mark Carney are we hearing today where he's like cozying up to America? You guys are amazing and we can help you. I'm like, what? So I just wanted to throw that joke in there.
Okay, my one last thing is a rising rig count in the United States and Canada. I hate to say I told you so. You all know how much I hate to say I told you so, even though I really love to say I told you so. In mid-March, I wrote a piece for the Daily Caller predicting that the war in Iran and the higher oil prices would lead to a modest return to drill, baby, drill. And that's exactly what's happening. We've added 10%, 60 rigs, a 10% increase to the rig count in the United States, and an even more rapid increase in the number of active rigs in Canada since that conflict began. And that's going to continue for as long as the Strait of Hormuz is closed. We're going to drill more wells and produce more oil and export more oil in the United States and even in Canada. despite the Jekyll and Hyde nature of the Carney regime related to the oil industry up there. The markets dominate. The markets are determinative at the end of the day, and the markets want and need more oil from places outside of the Persian Gulf. And Canada and the United States have a lot of it. So that's going to continue for as long as the conflict does. And that's my final comment for today, right exactly at the 1 hour mark. Damn, I'm good.
Woohoo.
Okay. We're done here, folks. See you next week. Thank
All
you,
right.
everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.